Hello, hello. This is Conversations with Robert and Tammy. This is Tammy Magnuson, a level 4 Eutaptics practitioner, and Sir Robert Jean, the founder of Eutaptics. And we're going to be covering a lot of interesting subjects, but one of them is how the professionals, the psychologists, and even Gabor Mate believes that trauma is an internal wound. And Robert's going to be addressing that directly so that you can have a better understanding of it and even learn some skills for what to do about it.
Yeah, I am Robert Jean, Robert Jean Smith here in Oklahoma. I've been studying about how to change myself, improve quality of my life. I've created Eutaptics and FasterEFT, a system that is a neuroplasticity system. It's a psychocentric system. It's based on the mechanics of the mind. I call myself a behavioral engineer or a neuroplastician. Basically, I can help re-engineer your life. I can help you adjust any memory, fear, phobia, trauma, illnesses. I've worked in drug rehabs for 9 years. I've worked with thousands and thousands of people, trained a lot of people, been around the world many times. And I know how the brain works, and I know how to empower you. I know how to change your life. And I want to share just my experiences on how the brain works. And if you want help, we're the guys to help you because we know what we're doing and it works. It takes no special belief. It's just mental mechanics. I say it's just 1 + 1 is 2. It's that simple. Now, granted, when you're working on it inside yourself, there are internal references, and I will explain a little bit how it works. So thank you for having me here.
Like different people have the same experience. How come this person's fine with it or this person turns angry and this person turns sad, or this person turns happy and has a good life from it? So
trauma is not what happened. It's how you internalize and translate it. It's based on your internal filters and what you do after it happens. It's like you may ask yourself crazy questions like, what happens if it does it again? What if I would have died? What if this happened? What if that happened?
Yeah.
And then they start creating movies and stories inside their head that escalates it. Now, that's one segment of it. Now, again, let's say you have someone who's like either a war experience or a rape memory or anything, even a school experience. The brain captures information based on that experience, and that the information it'll catch would be a sound or a look or a sensation or an image. Then the brain will re-give that to you, and then you will be having anxiety or panic attacks, or you'll have, night sweats. So the biggest error that I see in, like, most people, even like this guy here, he says basically these are wounds. These memories are wounds. These memories are
it's the internal wounds left from the experience, or it was the result.
Yeah, he calls it an internal psychological wound.
Yes.
And that is such untrue. It's not a wound. So what is it?
Well, I believe what you would say is it's a program. It's a set point for the brain to return to so that it can create from that experience a different.
So if you look at it at a logical, practical brain way of looking at it, all experiences are designed to train you to survive. All right. So everyone has their own jungle, emotional jungle, life jungle. All right. Now you have Uncle Joe. Uncle Joe is a pedophile and he's going to play with you. Well, this little girl knows nothing about this kind of stuff. All right. So now the world has been introduced to her. There could be emotional conflicts with this. Now, some kids, there's not an emotional conflict. It was fun. And then later on, it becomes a problem because they get in trouble, something bad happens. So again, it depends on how each individual responds and handles that information. So you're driving down the road, you see a horrible accident. Well, that accident just educated you about the world. And as that education goes in, now you have night sweats and panic, and you won't leave the house. All right. So you've been educated about the world. Your brain took this information and compounded it, and now it's trying to keep you safe. Panic attacks, night sweats, horrible fears, etc., are survival skills based on an experience. So you're not wounded. You're just educated in an area you wish you weren't educated in.
So
That's
you
a
would
total.
say it's not an internal trauma or an internal psychological wound. It's a survival skill.
It's an education about the world that you didn't know anything about. I mean, logic. I mean, just think about it logically. I mean, here it is. You putting gas in your car, and you see an accident where someone is hurt, harmed, or killed, and now you have anxiety attacks and panic attacks. You don't want to buy any gas anymore. All right. So you go to a psychologist and says, "Well, you've got a disorder. Your brain's not working right. You're defective. So you can start coming seeing me, talk to me every week. We'll give you a bag of pills." All right. What I say is you were exposed to something, an education about the world that you didn't know anything about. Your brain captured it and you're massaging it. You're fearing it. You're imagining it, recalling it, asking questions, flashbacks, and all this stuff. And the brain does that because it's trying to keep you safe. And so since we're controlled by these experiences, we don't know what to do with it. And you go to a psychologist, says you're broken now. And you go, okay, yeah, I'm broken. All right. So now you got a lifetime of trauma and it'll control your whole life. But yet I have somebody come in and they've had, a major trauma 43 years ago. And then less than an hour, they can't make it come back. They sleep all night long. Before they can only sleep 2 hours a night. All right. So what I did is I educated their brain, introduced new ideas, changed the sensations, emotions, and feelings, and pictures and sounds. And all of a sudden, their brain is educated again. It's in the past. It's not real today.
Right.
So the difference is the philosophy of the ideology about it.
So people see it as a wound because it's an unwanted result that keeps showing up in their life. For instance, you get anxiety because I know those questions we ask, like, oh my goodness, what if that was my kids? Or what if this or what? And those questions cause anxiety. And
well, it's not just the questions, though. It's the images they make. It's the sensations they create. It's the sounds they create inside themselves. So they create a whole theater within the self to keep themselves scared.
But we think that it's the experience. And so
that's true. But here's a big problem also. You have to understand. If you're a plumber and you're an expert at putting in pipes, changing toilets and sinks and all that stuff. And if I come to you and say I'm having anxiety and panic attacks, I can't sleep at night. You know what the plumber says? There's something wrong with your pipes. Something's broken. You know why he says that? Because he doesn't know what's going on. Now, if you go to someone who has a PhD on the wall and they study human behaviors and they didn't study about how to update memories and change memories, you know what they're going to tell you? You've got a disorder. And it's the only reason why it's a disorder.
And it's out of control.
Well, the only reason why it's a disorder is because they don't know what to do with it. They have no skills, talents, or know-how to update and change that memory.
Right.
And that experience. So again, we go and we trust these guys because they have a PhD on the wall and they have all this training. And they say, well, you got disorder. You're forever broken. You're going to have to live with this and deal with this the rest of your life.
Because this happened to you. Like
it happened to you. Yeah, it happened to you and it destroyed you.
Right.
And that's pure cow shit.
That's the A. That's the A that the Scarlet Letter.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Right. Like the experience defined this person, and now you've got this forever.
Yeah, but not everyone allows that to define them. And the only difference is one, internalization of what happened. Two, the mental and emotional massaging or grooming of this problem and building it bigger and bigger and bigger. And of course, it doesn't help when the brain starts recalling and replaying and rehearsing what happened. And then we have a tendency to compound it to make it like a really big problem.
Yeah.
And by the way, none of these are failures. These are all successes based on what happened, based on how the brain works, and based on survival skills.
Hmm. So when the experience happens, I it's interesting because I worked with somebody who, they just kind of wanted to experience what it's like to change a memory because isn't that a
Mhm.
lie? Isn't that a lie? And we hear that a lot.
Yeah.
And so what's interesting is how we use this experience to lie to ourselves, right?
Yeah.
And then
Last one. Yeah.
right. And then when we want to change, I mean, we lie to ourselves saying, I'm helpless. Like we create a whole
Mhm.
set
Mhm.
of beliefs from that. And it's true because of this experience.
Right. Well, again, when we recall it, it's real now. Our
Right.
brain creates it, makes it feel real now. Even though it's not real now, which is a lie, it feels real now. It's not true. It happened 20 years ago, or 30 years ago, or 3 weeks ago. But the
Right.
brain captures information, organizes across the cortices, and then it starts producing from this education. It's no different to learn how to drive a car. You jump in a car, you drive, but you didn't just learn how to drive in one day.
Right.
It takes many processes and many experiences and many trials and just repetition. And next thing you know, you've got panic attacks, you've got anxiety, you've got Great Depression, you have complex PTSD, which is like a massive overload of a lot of education about how crazy the world is or how abusive the world is. And again, mentally and consciously, we are not smart enough not to recall it, replay it, because we want to know so it won't happen again.
Yes.
But by knowing, practicing, and studying on the internet how bad it could be, we're actually building the great resource of miseries.
Yes. I mean, that practicing, that practicing of it is the protection, which was what you were talking about when you talk about the survival skill.
Mm-hmm.
So when the brain automatically says, oh, bring this up, that's a trigger, right? Bring
Mm-hmm.
this up, bring this up, bring this up. So then we're triggered to think about it, at, at least in the back of our head. Like some people don't even know about that.
Yeah. Well, again, the sad thing is, the modern world knows very little about how to change your mind. They don't know, and the professionals don't know. So again, the modern technology of today, which you tap to FasterEFT, is a system that understands directed mindfulness, being aware of what's in your mind and being able to change what's in your mind with a psychosensory process, natural memory reconsolidation, updating it to a point to where you have a different internal representation, and therefore you have a different outcome in your life and behaviors.
Right. And so when it happens, when we have this memory update, it's interesting because people will say like, is this weird that this person is smiling now? Or is it weird now they're laughing or now they're playing and having fun? So they literally feel like it's strange that this happened, but the brain just automatically did it.
Right.
So
Right.
so that's so when somebody thinks this is a lie, I'm not going to lie to myself. It's a very different experience from the inside experiencing it that
Yeah.
way, right?
Right. Right. Again, but as we just discussed a second ago, your past is a lie today. It's not true today. Now, again, your brain captures that information and it makes it feel true today. So the biggest difference is if we go to an unpleasant experience or a memory or a trauma, when you update it inside your brain, you're not changing history. You
Right.
can't change something that doesn't exist, because yesterday is gone. You can never go back and re-experience it unless you recreate it in your mind, which is a new recreation, not the original, which is designed from inside of the mind. So, always, one of the things I say, listen, if you're gonna have a fantasy, pick a good one. Don't, one of the worst things I see in the world today, let's say, for example, let's say you're my sister or my daughter or something, and every time we meet, I talk about all the things that you did wrong in the past. You wet yourself and we had to take clothes to school. you fell down and scant your knee, you stole a penny from somebody. And every time we meet, I rehearse and recall your history of misery. Now, what that does, it creates a mental and emotional program and a value system that is not very, very positive. Because if I keep recalling, say, for example, you're a Black person or I'm a Black person, and Black history is go back and remember all the miserable things that happened to us, all the bad things that happened to us, and all the injustices. Like, you wet yourself and your dad had to bring underwear to school. And like you stole
the most embarrassing moments in the world.
And so if we recall the miserable histories, what does that value give to you and your children if we talk about these things? It creates a victimization of the self.
Yeah.
It's glorifying misery. That, and so history is only as good as a storyteller, but your history does project into your future as you recall it, replay it, imagine it, and it is forecasted. So the best things I would say is remember when you made straight A's, or when you made a beautiful cake, or whenever you won this or you did that. And that will empower you to be a greater person. But if we keep looking at the miserable things that happen to you and us, of course, I mean, you don't hear much about slavery in America when the first slaves were the white Irish people, and how they were, and they even had signs, no Irish people allowed, or the Polish people in America. Of course, we don't hear that much because, again, if you do that, it kind of beats people down. It keeps people small. So the worst thing for us to do is recall the miserable past, replay the past. When I was working did seminar in Poland, one of the girls, of course, in Poland, what they did to the kids in school, they'd take them to Auschwitz. And that's back when they had the bones and pieces and stuff right there. And they would take these school kids to see this. And this girl said, I just felt so guilty to be alive. Now, let me ask you that. Is that a great value to grow up having? And the answer is no. Definitely not.
Right.
How would you, I mean, some of you guys who may be watching this, how many of you go visit family and your mom and your dad, they all tell you about bad things that happened to you as you're growing up? It just really encouraged you to be positive. Not. So again, these are some of the worst things about our history is that we build, and granted, if you like being miserable, and depression is a great badge of honor and connection to the emotional family, good for you. But I will tell you this, death awaits you, but it'll be miserable before you get there.
Okay. This is fascinating because, I went through a divorce and there was a lot of physical, sexual, mental abuse and cheating and everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I would go visit my mom on holidays and stuff. And this was back when my kids were here. And I would get oh, I'm so sorry. Oh, this is so terrible. Well, then when I changed I updated some memories, and they just updated really well and solidified for me and reconsolidated. And I went there and my mom started in, to her, this was our way of connecting and bonding and like, oh, I feel sorry for you. Mm-hmm. And this was seriously the relationship that brings people together sometimes. And for us, it was. And so she started that. Oh, it's Thanksgiving and he didn't even let you have the kids after everything he's done to you. I'm so sorry. And I just felt this like armor. It felt like, and I was like, you know what? I'm just like, my mind immediately shifted to what I was thankful for.
Right. And
it was so easy to make that shift instead of like make her feel bad or fight with her or anything. It was just a very simple, like, I'm so grateful that we're here though. Like, this is going to be such a nice time for just us to be together. And my mindset of not needing to have that pity or whatever place that parents think we give our kids when we feel sorry for them because of the things that have happened to them. It's very disempowering. And that was a clear picture for me, being from the victim to the person that is like, hey, I'm enjoying life. There's nothing to feel sorry about.
Exactly. Yeah. Again,
And
and there's another thing that I see, because I've been working with been working with a young kid, 14 years old, and he's had some physical problems, illnesses and stuff. And the worst thing is say for example, Tammy, I mean, you have a few kids, 6 kids, right? Five
five.
kids. Right? I mean, if you have 5 kids,
I can have six.
So here it is, you're watching TV and a kid was kidnapped. Well, this mother starts to worrying that her kids will be kidnapped. Now, the rarity of a child being kidnapped is super rare. Not that it doesn't happen, it does, but it does make big news. And so you're a mother so horrified and scared, traumatized, worrying that somebody's going to steal her kids, you know? And then, of course, this emotional feeling is also pressed upon these children of being scared of the world. And so, but yet, if I know those kids, no one's going to take those kids. They would return them quickly, you know. But you know, the point is that the mother who had a horrible childbirth with this child, the child may have, some kind of a illness or something, but the mother won't let go of that illness. And so as she treats this child, treats it as if it's always sick, act like it's always sick, and that child grows up to always be sick. And I don't know, there was an experiment or experience where a teacher had she got all these kids that were the slow learners, and of course she didn't know they were slow learners, and she looked at all the numbers by their names and said, well, all these kids got high IQs, not realizing that these numbers were their locker numbers, right? So she treated these kids like they're super smart and super intelligent, and they superseded the knowledge base and the skill set than the other kids because of the teacher's attitude and belief towards the kids.
Right.
And so it's imperative to understand the presumed belief and attitude we have about ourself, about our past, about our future, about our children, about relationships taint our experiences in front of us. So, and for me, working with trauma now, and I created Utaptic's FasterEFT. I've worked many years helping people change traumas, addictions, fears, phobias of all sorts, and illnesses. Working in volunteering and drug rehabs for 9 years. And I worked with the worst, severest cases you could ever imagine. And, where people were witnessing death or nearly killed or thought to be killed, raped, murdered, all kinds of horrible traumas, people coming from Afghanistan, and they become addicted trying to escape their emotions. And so, when they come in, of course, this system that I train is a powerful system, but it's so outside of the box of the modern thinking. Being able to change a trauma in 10 minutes. This guy, he said, well, his name is Joshua. He was in the military in Afghanistan. He's seen people killed, and all kind killed people. And he's a good guy, but it just tormented him. And he came in and he said, man, I've never talked about these things. It's just too hard. Now, of course, here it is, this guy waking up 6 times a night, can't sleep at night, trembling, smoking. And so I said, why don't we do this? Why don't you just pick a memory, and you don't have to tell me anything about it. I will help you adjust it to where you'll be okay with it. So within 5 or 10 minutes, he says, well, it didn't bother me. I said, can you talk about it? I said, sure. So he tells me the whole story. He says, I can't believe I feel nothing now. It was like, it was real,
Yes.
And then I said, look, we did this memory without sharing. So what I do is like math. If you do this, you get that. It's not mystical. It's not magical. It's not, you don't need God. You don't need Jesus. You don't need anything but mental clarity, understanding on how to do this. And so now, granted, if you're spiritual, it's definitely spiritual. If you're not spiritual, it's definitely mechanical. It works,
Right. It
And
works
so
within the system of your learning and understanding.
it works within the system of the brain.
Mhm.
Because, I mean, logically, everybody knows. I mean, you and I know, and everybody's listening. The cause of our problems is memories and our unpleasant experiences.
Yeah. And people can say that directly. If you're like, how come this bothers you? They'll be like, well, when I was a kid, this happened. Yeah. And
Mhm.
we know that link, but we don't
Yeah.
really see how much it impacts.
Yeah, and another thing with these memories, adjusting memories, one of the biggest things I hear is say, well, if I get rid of this memory, it'll make me weak. It'll make it happen to me again. I said, that's
Yes.
it's not true. If you have traumas inside your head and unpleasant experiences, it's in your head. It is a how to experience the world.
Yep.
It helps us pick in the world what fits already inside of our head. So if you have a trauma and you don't let it go, it's guaranteed you're going to experience that trauma in a different way, in a different style. Either you'll do the trauma or be the trauma or experience the trauma.
Right.
So the insanity is keeping it.
No, it is the how. Like once I knew how, and this does come back to God for me because I was like trying to forgive all those things that happened. And
Mm-hmm.
forgiveness was so simple when the memory changed. I'm like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
I'm literally not focused on that pain anymore. There's not a,
Right. Right.
so, so, you know, anybody that probably believes in spirituality believes we should forgive.
Yeah.
But the natural brain, the normal brain says, hold on to it because it's a
Right.
survival skill.
Yeah.
Hold
Yeah.
on. So as soon as it goes to that fear and says, hold on, hold on, hold on, don't forget, don't forget, don't forget. We do that naturally because we believe that's going to prevent it. We're going to catch it before it happens. But God knows, like the forgiveness, every spiritual person that understands forgiveness knows that actually when you let it go, then it's not going to repeat.
Yeah. Well,
So
there's awareness to forgiveness, and most people don't understand forgiveness. Forgiveness is not saying I forgive you for what you did.
right.
Forgiveness is really changing inside you what you hold about that experience against you. So what I created the coin called ultimate forgiveness, and ultimate forgiveness is not going to your brother and say, you know, I forgive you for being a jerk. He goes, and he says,
I'm
screw
not the
you.
jerk.
He says, screw you, you're the jerk, you know? So
Yep.
forgiveness is not going to them and saying, I forgive you, because, you know, he may say, screw you, I hate you. Now,
Mm-hmm.
what are you going to do? So forgiveness, and reason why forgiveness is such a powerful principle in seemingly spiritual trainings, because spiritual training is really emotional training. It's about, because unforgiveness has lots of emotions,
Yeah.
anger, hurt, rage, etc.
So
So I
many.
say forgiveness is really a logical process for emotional evolution. So ultimate forgiveness is going inside you and your memories, and you change your references and how you feel about them. Because see, they may not ever remember this happening. They have no recollection of what you did. You
Yep.
know,
Or
it's
they
like,
see it like it's your fault.
yeah,
And they need to
could be.
forgive you.
Yeah, because again, just remember, it's our stuff. And like my oldest son, he and I and a friend was at in Scotland. It was at a restaurant where eating haggis. You know, never had it before. And he goes, Dad, do you remember the day you almost caught the house on fire? I go, no, I don't remember that. What happened? He goes, well, you know, you had honeybees and you was boiling water on the stove and you left it. Smoke was barreling out of the house. And you came running and I was standing there and you spanked me and then you ran into the house. I said, I don't remember that, Adam. He said, how can you forget that? It scarred me for life. And I said, Adam, I'm sorry. You know, I don't even remember it happening. But he had this internal memory, this internal burning of hurt and pain against me. And I have no memory of it. I mean, it must have been a spur of the moment, bam, whatever happened. But again, unforgiveness is the poison we drink that's destroying ourselves. And it's our own personal memories and references that torment us.
Yes. And
And
our references of our parents, like when my kids get together and it's like bash mom day. Remember when mom did this? Remember? And I'm like, not the way, right? But our adult mind sees it different than our child mind. And I was just talking about this morning to Priella. I'm like, right now you think that that's not important, but the little you does think it's important.
Mm-hmm.
Very important. And the difference is if I can put you back into the little you mindset, then you can experience it and be set free from that point
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
it was hurt, where you believed something untrue.
Mm-hmm.
And anybody that has siblings will get together and do that too. They're just like, that's not what happened. That's not what happened.
Yeah.
The memory and the belief system changed
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. It's
kind
like
of strange to think
yeah.
like, well, what's actually true?
It's like this one kid. There's 4 kids in the family, and 2 years out of their life they lived out in the country, and those 2 years they didn't go trick-or-treating. The rest of the years they did. But one of the kids said, "You never took us trick-or-treating."
Right.
But they are only 2 of the times that they're using these 2 references only, not the 500 times or the 12 years of times going, but they stuck in this 1-2 experience, and it distorts everything. And the reason why the brain does this is for survival, is an emotional trauma to a child, but it's like your mother picks you up at school every day, every year until you're, 5th grade, let's say. But why is it that you don't remember the day that she wasn't there? Why is it you now have this fear of being abandoned?
So why is it?
And the reason is because this memory has strong emotions. This memory says, I don't like this and I don't want this, and it hurt and it bothers me, and it overshadows, we call it an imprint. It overshadows the thousands of times you're picked up, and it amplifies the one. So this is the distortion of the mind. We call it an emotional imprint. And we operate from it as if it was gospel truth, even though it's one time, one experience only.
Mm-hmm.
And the hundreds of times being picked up are negated now because this one here has more emotions and juice in it. So that's why it happens that way.
And so I like to say like that those highly charged emotional events, we're mom doesn't love us. Nobody cares about us. Like these things that we create from that become like these little soldiers, and they stand up at the front of the brain, and they're like the trigger to say, oh, there it is again. There it is again. There it is again.
And then they will start accumulating memories to add to this.
Right.
They start building what you call the great belief system. Now, the odd thing is this belief system that we create about ourselves and about the world, it distorts everything. It distorts everything to match their internal belief system. Even if everything was going south in their mind, it's all going north based on their internal distortions. Mm-hmm. So again, once you start making peace with these memories, mm-hmm. in these experiences, then you can move forward. But if you don't, you'll stay in the hamster wheel, never going anywhere, thinking you're doing something good, but you're still staying miserable. And again, who will you be if you let it go? That's the $100 question. Who will you be is still you. And again, one of the things I say, the behavior and the person are 2 different pieces. Mm-hmm. The behavior is an outcome based on inner references. You change the inner references, the behavior changes. If you don't change those inner processing, you stay stuck in the hamster wheel. So you get to pick which hamster wheel you want. You want one of misery or one of happiness. Both of them create chemicals. Both of them has work involved. Both of them creates a result. One of them feels better than the other. And of course, we did an interview the other day. I said, who are you really? Who are you really? You're not your programs and you're not your behaviors. Who your essence is, your true source is that little piece of you that swam to the egg, beating millions of others. You survived. 9 months later, you survived. And this survival part of you is pure. It's you can call it the God force, the survival force. And whatever you put on top of that survival system, which is memories, good memories, bad memories, this part of you will start using that to create and manifest. So
The distortion is the
well, let's take distortion. The education laid on top of it, because see, look, say for example, you're the 12th child, and
right.
and you've got your parents are pissed off and angry, and you're the one that they didn't want because you were the accident that shouldn't have happened. This emotional environment will educate you on your role in that position in that family.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's just an education. That's your own personal jungle you're learning to live in. Now, let's say you're the only child, and you're the golden child, the one they've been waiting for. Everybody gloats on you and amazes how beautiful you are, and they say nice things to you, and mom's nice and everybody's nice. Well, that same essence is still there, but it's using different references, different educations. So again, we all have an education, and we'll call trauma is an intense education. Now, the weird thing is you can have some kind of big T's and little T's. I'd say big E's and little E's, big education, little educations. That's all it is.
Mm-hmm.
And so, working with somebody who had, like, for example, Jason, he works here with me. I didn't know he had a fear of heights. I had no idea, So I said, "Hey, Jason, will you put that cell booster up on the outside of the wall?" He says, "Yeah, sure." Well, I come in. I noticed I had a rope tied around it, hanging through the inside of the window. I said, "Jason, I want it on the outside. I don't want it on the inside." He goes, "Let me be honest with you, Robert. I have a fear of heights." I said, "Well, we got to get rid of that one." I said, "Won't you write a list of experiences?" I said, "We'll work on it." 10 minutes later, he's climbing out there on top of that ladder with a drill in his hand and screwing up against the wall. He says, "I've never been this high before." And then the next day he came into work. He just climbed up the ladder, see if it was still gone.
Oh.
And it took 10 minutes. And he's had it over 40 years. Wow. And it controls his existence. So this is the power of the mind, and knowing how to adjust it, your future will be different. Mm-hmm. So when we talk about, how our brains work and how to update yourself and what traumas are, and forgiveness is saying, I release it from within me.
Right.
I change it within me.
Yeah.
Because again, you go to somebody and say, I forgive you, and they hate you, So again, what are you going to do with that?
And that's interesting, because usually when I'm working with people, I frequently make them aware that they're using this person to feel this way. So, yeah, sure, you use dad to help you feel stupid, because in your head, dad's the one that made you feel stupid. But every time you replay it, it's just like an awareness that whatever you're replaying that person doing in the unforgiveness, you're like, I'm not gonna let this go, because then I won't be smart. Actually, by replaying it, you're using the image to enhance the feeling. But forgiveness is when dad thinks you're smart, then you can feel smart.
But here's another aspect about memories. As you know, when you call a memory, everything in the memory is yourself. It means if you have an unpleasant memory with dad, your dad inside your head, because your dad doesn't fit in your head. So that means your brain created an ideal called dad. It created a person called dad, or an entity called dad. Now, this is your own personal rendition of dad. It's your own personal emotional supply of dad. So when you go back to a memory and dad is punching you in the face, who's punching you in the face? It's you.
Because you're using dad to do it in your head.
You're using your version of dad and your experience of dad.
But who's feeling the punch?
Yeah.
Who's feeling
it feels real. Yeah.
Right.
It feels real because your brain is making it real. So you may have had a bad experience with dad. The experience of dad is not the trauma. The trauma is what you do within yourself with that experience internally.
Yeah.
It's how you're processing it against yourself. And, it's the weird thing is, it's like when you have an unpleasant experience, after it happens, people replay the experience. They imagine the experience. They ask questions about that experience. They rehearse it and they imagine, what if it's worse? What if it happens again? And then they create a full theater and they embellish this great experience and then wonder why they have panic attacks or why they're alone. But they said, I hate being alone, but I hate people too.
Well, this is interesting because I thought I was the only one that did that.
Which one?
I mean, I was like, oh no, then he's going to say this and I'm going to do that. And like, I thought I was the only one in the world that did that. So it was very eye-opening to see like, this is normal. I thought.
Yeah. Well, it's like, I told you I'm working with this little 14-year-old kid. And of course, they keep taking him to the doctors. He has this horrible fear of throwing up. He's got all these emotional issues and health issues and all this stuff. And then they think there's something really wrong with him physically. And they keep going to the doctor. They can't find anything. And so I said, well, let me just help him. So we booked a book session. And I just go in and start making adjustments inside of his memories about illnesses and puking. And they couldn't say the T word, throw up. They couldn't say that. And so by the time I'm done, I said, throw up. He had no response. And I did my third session. And he said, yeah, I thought I was going to throw up. I said, do you realize that you're saying that word and before you couldn't say it? All right. So this emotional system inside of our head makes us sick because we worry about it. And I said, listen, there's nothing wrong with your health. You're just worried. You're worrying about things. He goes, I know. I said, we got to stop the worry. Let's change what it is you're worrying about. Let's go clean these parts up and start practicing what you want. And so that's the key. So again, it's internalization. Of course, there's a lot of people out there and, they say, well, let's heal trauma. All right. How do you heal trauma? First of all, trauma is not sick. Trauma is not sick. Trauma is a process in which you do within you. And you're not broken. One of the guys said it's an internal psychological wound. That's not true. It's an internal psychological education. It's education on how to survive in the world.
It's a strong neural pathway, right? When you talked about what we practice becomes a more, more well-traveled path.
So the biggest error that we see, that I see in the world who wants to help trauma or try to, is seeing that the trauma is an illness, seeing that trauma is a wound you'll never heal. I would not go to those guys because their belief system will hinder your ability to heal. Totally. You'll still be seeing them 20 years from now. You're not broken. In my world, you're not broken. You're successfully manifesting something you said you don't like, and you might not even notice what you're doing to create it.
Right.
You may not notice that you're having a movie theater of what happened. You may not even notice that when you wake up, you imagine it happening and hoping it doesn't happen, but you're also rehearsing and replaying it. And so to end the emotional insanity is learn neuroplasticity. And neuroplasticity, my way, is a fast way to create a life change. We got our videos on YouTube. We got 1,500, over 15 million video views. Look at the testimonials of people who are really, really, really sick, physical illnesses, ailments, and back pain, all kinds of stuff. Really, really sick. And they're not sick anymore. As a matter of fact, 10 years later, they're still not sick. Because the brain is a manifester of health, and it's a manifester of death and illness. But if you step inside of it and make the adjustments will be profoundly big in a good way.
Right. It was interesting. I was talking to a psychologist and she was talking about how she hates trauma. And I thought, wow, I love trauma. Like, it's weird. I don't love that someone went through something, but
it's exciting that you can change it.
Find that piece, the trauma that's causing this problem. That's the gold, right? Like, you're like, wow, this is all we have to do. And so it's a whole different mindset. When she said that, it kind of just caught me off guard because I'm like, how could you hate trauma? Like, this is the
But see, again, you remember, you have a
whole different mindset.
You have a different education she does, because with her system, you can't do nothing with trauma.
Right. And I just forgot that 5 years ago, I hated trauma too, or 6 years ago, 7,
Yeah, whenever
because
before you
it's
started, yeah.
scary. Right. It's scary to not know there's nothing we can do about it. It's
Hmm.
hopeless. This
Hmm.
happened, so you're forever like this. And yeah, that was a big insight. I was like, wow, how different for
Yeah,
a
well,
week.
like, yeah, that's because your education is a lot different than their education. And that makes the big difference, So knowledge is power. Of course, there's people watching this call, watching this interview, and one of the things I noticed that if you had some bad stuff happen to you, that's the worst place you want to go. You don't want to go there. You're afraid of it. Like how many times I've heard this story. I went to a therapist to talk about my problems. When I left, I'm ready to kill myself. You don't see that in our sessions. When they leave, they say, oh my God, I'm so glad it's off. It's gone. I have peace. I have hope. A psychologist I'm working with 20 years, I've had no hope, miserable and depressed, and it's gone now. I have faith that things can change. Mm-hmm. So again, the model of thinking is important. And what I said and what I teach in training, I said, it doesn't matter which modality you do, every modality has a belief system. And that belief system will dictate whether you heal fast, slow, or if ever. And again, when you got to look at their belief system. You go to a medical doctor and their two skills is cut it up or drug it up, right? So that means if there's anything else, any variance of that, the kid who went to the doctor and he says, well, there's nothing wrong with him. There's nothing to drug. And of course, he's on antidepressants. That's really going to fix it. So again, now if you're, a psychologist or psychology says, well, we know it's a memory and we're going to dig around your childhood. And once we understand why this happened, you should feel better. And of course, the lady who's crying on my couch, and for 20 years, she's been in therapy. She said, I spent so much money, I could have 2 homes for the much money I spent in therapy. But why am I still so miserable? I understand why my dad, what he did, my ex-husband, what he did, but I still don't feel any better. And I said, the reason is the cause of your problems is because you have memories holding and playing within yourself. Just because you logically understand something doesn't mean it goes away. You just have good proof to keep the problem.
Right. And the difference between changing and understanding is that the dad is smiling at the end and the child is smiling. So the difference really is this idea that things are so different that you respond differently because you're no longer that person limited by that experience.
Yeah, you've updated your internal references.
Yeah.
You respond differently.
So here's the deal. If my dad abused me and I understand why he did it and he's trying to save me and make me a good kid and all these things, I can understand that, but I don't feel it hasn't changed the reference from what I'm going to respond when bad things happen to me. I'm going to go straight back to I am bad. I have proof. Dad spanked me and he's this and that. So, but if all of a sudden through memory change, dad is now laughing and flying a kite with me or taking me to the beach and swimming with dolphins with me. Now I'm a different, I operate from a different feeling, and the feeling is going to dictate the action response.
Yeah. Let me explain what she's talking about in a simple term. Even more simple than that, guys. You have to understand. If you understand the principles of the mind, first of all, everything inside your brain is you. So if you have a memory of dad punching you in the face, that's you punching you in the face. Even though dad may have done it 50 years ago, he's not punching you in the face. So when you go and update your memory inside of you, you don't change dad, you don't change what happened, but you're only changing what your brain will recycle on you. Mm-hmm. So if you go and you adjust your memory about dad being nice and kind, guess what your brain will do to you? You'll be nice and kind.
To everyone. Now,
yeah.
A natural byproduct.
Yeah. And it's if you understand that your brain is like a computer, if you put a program in, it's going to work. If you put an angry program, it'll be angry. If you put a loving program in there, it'll be loving. If you take an angry program and change it into loving, you'll be loving. If you take a positive experience and you make it a bad experience, you'll be feeling bad. It's that simple. To the brain, whatever is in there is not bad. It is not good. It's just a program. And your brain recycles. It's the first recycling system in the world. It recycles your experience and it re-gives you whatever you hold. So if you don't like being miserable, change the miserable experiences to positive experiences.
Well,
And your brain will start doing it. Now, guys, you could sit there and watch a TV show and feel happy or sad. But yet that's just a fake experience on a TV screen.
Exactly.
And so your brain doesn't know if it's bad or good, if it's real or true or not true.
No.
It's just a TV show.
Yeah. And I think that's interesting because I think a lot of people believe emotions are like air or something like, only God can change emotions or something, but they're literally a physical sensation in your body. It's a physical sensation. So
it depends. There's 5 types of memory. Some of them are physical. Right. Some of them are not physical. Some of them are visual or auditory.
Right. But when you feel an emotion like fear,
anger,
or that's a physical sensation. Yeah. It's not just something you can't do anything about.
Right. Well, if you don't know how, you can't.
Right.
If you do know how, you can.
Yeah.
And this is where the emotional education we all need. It's a spiritual evolution or an emotional evolution of the self. Know thyself is not your name on your driver's license or birth certificate. Know thyself is know what you do within yourself, to yourself, by yourself.
And how to change it for yourself, because some people need different things to change things.
Yeah, there's many, many combinations.
Right. All right. So in response to Gabor Mate's, trauma is inside as a result of what happened to you and is now an internal psychological wound. You would say
no.
It's the survival
skill. It's emotional education about how the world is, and your brain will use that information to keep you alive and safe. Unfortunately, it keeps you locked into that same miserableness. Yeah. So it's not a internal psychological wound. It's not even a damage. Now, granted, consciously, we don't like the results that our brain is producing because we hadn't taken control of the brain, nor have we learned how to change what's in the brain. So there's people, like I said, who's had a lot of traumas. And if they had a lot of traumas, the worst thing they want to do is go to their traumas. They'd rather eat cake, They'd rather do anything else. Just because you ignore it doesn't make it gone. Pretend it's not there, doesn't make it go away. It's waiting for the right opportunity to knock on your emotional door. And so what we want to do is we want to inoculate, update, and change all traumas. And the sad thing is, because the worst people to work on or the worst people to come are people who are in positions such as ministers, police officers, nurses, police officers, military guys. And people who come from really strong emotional abusive environments. They don't want to come because they have to try to be mentally strong and try to divert their attention, and therefore, drug use or alcohol use or obesity or obsessive behaviors like cleaning or shopping or gambling or hunting, whatever it is you do to try to avoid yourself. The problem is the older you get, the more the world slows down for you because you can't move fast enough anymore. That's when the demons, or I say demons, that's where the emotional education that are unpleasant starts coming out. And that's when you start having physical issues or psychological issues or whatever it is, issues. So the key is you
think it's because the body slows down that you become less resilient? Because I've noticed that.
When you get older, your body is getting older. I mean, you can't run a mile or do 100 push-ups like you used to. And when you're younger, you stay busy. So if you stay busy, you can't think.
So busy is a form of coping
mechanism. Escapism. Yes. Yeah. Escapaholic.
And then you retire and everything crashes in because
when life starts slowing down.
Time to think about those things that are in the background.
When things slow down, that stuff you've been trying to keep in the closet, the door's full and it's trying to come out of the closet. That's that stuff you've been avoiding. And you can't avoid what's in you. The alcohol fades off. The drugs fade off. You got to take a break. You can't work all the time, you know? And then that's when the stuff starts happening. And they said, well, I wasn't like this 10 years ago. I said, because 10 years ago, you're too busy to be thinking. Your life slowed down and that stuff is trying to come out.
Hmm.
So again, there is hope, guys. And if you'd like to learn how to change your life, update those traumas. I mean, sometimes you get rid of, make an adjustment of trauma. It takes 10 minutes and you've been dragging around for 50 years or longer, you know? And we do, you know, I train my students to do the biggest and the worst stuff. And of course, like Tammy said, I love trauma because when you find it, you can change it. I hate trauma because I can't.
To me for help, I like it. Otherwise, I'm like, oh no, you have that.
Yeah, you don't want. I mean, but listen, if you have trauma, you know how to deal with it yourself too.
Right.
Because either you'll do it yourself, or you'll find one of your fellow students to help you clean it up. There's a great production within.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever it is, a great production.
Very good.
So what do we start out with anyway? What was this whole conversation started with?
It was trauma is what inside as a result of what happened to you, and the comment of that it's a psychological wound, or that you're wounded or broken forever because of it. Yeah. I mean, it feels like a wound.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Well, I mean, it feels like a wound only because our brain is making it feel real. But it's not real. It just seems real. And it's based on unpleasantry. So we just change those. You know, like if you look at Gabor Mate, you look at his life, you know, again, who we are, who we think we are based on our internal references and our stories. And again, if you use your history as a bouncing board for your current identity, and you look at it and you want to blame that your current problems are because of war, is because of, you know, the stories that you tell, and it's true. Based on what you create inside your mind, that's true. It's not necessarily true. And again, if you think that these experiences are actual and factual today, they're not. They were, but it's how you hold and represent it. So you look at Gabor's story, his story and his teachings are in alignment that it is a wound. You're always going to have this wound. It's an internal psychological wound that manifests your problems in your body, in your health, in the world. But the system is different from a different mindset. Yes, we all had bad experiences. I have them. I've had them too. We all have. But we can either let those experiences create an identity and a value system for us, or we can use that to change that identity and value system, and you'll act and have a totally different life. So it is not a wound. It is an emotional education. Mm-hmm. And if you take this education, learn from it, let go of the pain of it, and then change it to where you're producing something different, you get something different. And that's the biggest difference I see, you know, granted, you know, my story is not exactly like his, but there's similarities of trauma, hurt, etc. But that's not true today. That don't define me. Right. Because how I internalize me is who I am today.
And one of the greatest benefits is, like you talked about, that person that had been in war, to be able to talk about it and not have that. Like,
and it's not real.
Stories that I was like, I'm not ever telling this to anyone. And then you get it out and you change it. And then you're like, oh, it's not even a big deal.
It's not true.
Right. Yeah.
Before it was true. And so we diffuse it and we put the past in the past. And this is what happens. When you recall a memory that you hadn't cleaned up, when you recall it, it's right here. It's like right now. Yep. The past is real now. But when we get done with it, we change it, we adjust it, we fix it. When you think about it, it's like way over there. I know it happened, but it's not true today. Before it was true 10 minutes ago. And that sets you free.
True to you, because what you believe is going to be recreated.
Because belief is an internalization of your identity and value system, which is based on your memories, what you hold inside. You change the memories, you change your belief. So good stuff, huh?
Yes, very good.